Welcome to this edition of Head to Head. I'm your host, Cam McKinney, and this is episode number 226 of the podcast. And on this edition of the podcast, I'm talking about the Celtics suspending head coach Ime Udoka for a full season. Last week, fans of the Celtics and the NBA were shocked to learn Celtics head coach Ime Udoka has been suspended for the entire season, a week before training camp, for allegedly having a relationship with a member of the team staff. I'll start with this. I have zero interest in talking about the alleged rumors as to what Udoka has done. What I will say is I believe the team is making the right choice. Why on earth would the Celtics want to suspend their head coach for that long of a time period? The length of the suspension speaks volumes to the severity of the situation. No head coach in the entire history of the NBA has been suspended an entire season. There must be a reason as to why Udoka has been. This was a rookie head coach who led the team to within 2 games of winning an NBA championship. I'm positive the team looked at this guy as the long-term answer as head coach, and now we're at the point where I would be shocked if he ever coaches for the Boston Celtics again. I think there's zero chance he coaches for the Celtics again. How can he? The minute he returns, that's all anyone is ever going to want to talk about or think about when it comes to Ime Udoka. He is going to be a walking distraction as the head coach of the Boston Celtics. This might be a 1-year suspension, but this guy, in my opinion, is never going to coach the team again. And I know a lot of people are wondering, then why is he only suspended a year and why wasn't he fired? I don't know the reasons for that. I, in particular, would just be shocked if Ime Udoka is ever on the sidelines for the Celtics again. Especially if he comes back and we're still blurry on the details as to what exactly went down. I mean, that's all reporters are going to ask Udoka about. They're not going to want to talk to him about basketball at all. Based on how this has played out thus far, there is no way that it can ever get back to normal with Ime Udoka and the Boston Celtics. That is as far as I can go on that one. The man who will now be coaching the Boston Celtics is 34-year-old Joe Mazzulla, who is inheriting a stacked basketball team that is adding Malcolm Brogdon. The Celtics, with or without Ime Udoka, have huge expectations. And all of the talk about Mazzulla has been about his inexperience. And I would say to the people doubting him, look at some of the people that have had lots of success as head coaches without a lot of experience in recent years. Steve Kerr went from the basketball broadcasting booth to winning NBA championships with the Golden State Warriors. Steve Nash is the head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. Now, Steve Nash is not a great coach, but I think he's an okay one. At least Joe Mazzulla has been an assistant coach who has been around these players. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown know this guy. Presumably, they're comfortable with this guy being their head coach. And I think that's what's most important, is how these players feel about Joe Mazzulla. With all that said, there is a chance that this could all go wrong and that Joe Mazzulla's inexperience will lead the Celtics to have early problems in the beginning of the regular season. But I don't think we're looking at a situation where Joe Mazzulla is going to struggle mightily and then all of a sudden Brad Stevens, the president of the Celtics, is going to come down and coach the team like Pat Riley did with the Miami Heat after they got rid of Stan Van Gundy. I think this is going to be a situation where Joe Mazzulla is given a full season to be head coach of the Boston Celtics. I would be surprised if they made any in-season moves. One of the reasons I think the team can handle this situation is because they're no longer that young team. They are now a veteran team who has made it to the NBA Finals. They should be able to play well under these circumstances. You have Jason Tatum, who's an MVP caliber player. You have Jaylen Brown, who's an all-star caliber player. You have Marcus Smart, who won Defensive Player of the Year. At some point this season, you're going to get Rob Williams back, one of the best defensive centers in basketball. You have Malcolm Brogdon, who might be a 6th Man of the Year candidate. And you have some young guys who are hopefully going to improve, like Grant Williams. You also just added Blake Griffin, who I think is going to add some very good veteran experience to that bench. I'm not worried about them on the court. I'm worried about their psyche off the court, because all season long they are going to be asked relentlessly about Ime Udoka, someone who is not going to be with the team. The distraction is what's going to hurt this team, not the on-court product. I think the Celtics are going to have a really good regular regular season. The problem is once they get to the postseason and they're still going to be asked about Ime Udoka, how are they going to handle that? We just don't know. We're going to have to see it play out in real time, and that could be the deciding factor as to whether or not this Celtics team is a legitimate championship contending team, is how they deal with this distraction. This is not a normal sports team distraction. Nobody has been suspended for their play. This is a guy being suspended for bad behavior off the court. This is uncomfortable for these guys to talk about, and for them to have to talk about it all season long is going to be a daunting task, to say the least. We all thought we'd be entering this NBA season with talks of the Celtics being favorites to win it all, but instead we are focusing on this controversy, and rightfully so. It deserves to be talked about. It deserves to be reported on, but it can really only negatively impact what's happening on the court. Like, maybe the players can rally around each other and survive this chaos, but that's a tough ask. One thing I hated about this Udoka ordeal is how the media treated this story like it was just another headline you could debate on TV for entertainment. Any opinion without all the facts involved is not valid. Why can't we wait for more details on any story, not just this one, before commenting on it? I don't think we are at the very end of the story. In fact, I think it's the very beginning. We just don't know much of the details. There must be a reason why Udoka was suspended and not fired. There was a failure during the coverage in all of this because there's a constant need to report things first. There has never been anything like this situation in the history of the NBA. It's unprecedented for anyone, let alone a coach, to be suspended an entire season by a team, yet it was treated like just another topic to get content out of. This is yet another example as to why using social media as the number one source of news is dangerous. It just creates this endless amount of speculation, which is good for absolutely no one. It felt classless, all of it. When I was growing up, it just felt like these sports channels like ESPN was better at reporting these kind of stories. Like, they would have these shows like Outside the Lines. Outside the Lines is still on, but it used to be on every day, and every day I would come home and watch it, and they would talk about a serious sports topic, and they would talk about it with care and concern. They would have well thought out of and intelligent conversations about uncomfortable topics in sports. There was always nuance on that show. Now everything is lacking, especially during every sports show talking about this Ime Udoka situation. Because instead of trying to sound smart, people are trying to get all of their opinions out in real time. And in real time is the most dangerous time to have your opinions out there. I'll use Matt Barnes as an example. Matt Barnes is a former NBA player who has now become an analyst and media personality. And when the story first broke, he said, how could Ime Udoka be suspended an entire year? That just seems wrong. And then days later, he's apologizing, saying, wow, if you guys knew the real story, you wouldn't feel that way about Ime Udoka. That right there is my problem with where we are at with these kind of topics. On one hand, it's great that Matt Barnes is able to say he was wrong about the situation and the severity of it. On the other hand, he should not have commented on it in the first place without any of the facts to back up how he was feeling about it. And I just don't want to call out Matt Barnes. I also feel the same way about Stephen A. Smith, that Stephen A. Smith is good at his job. He is trying to entertain you in the morning by debating sports topics. This is not a situation that should be debated. This is a topic where you should have a grown-up discussion without yelling at people. Yes, it can be fun to see Stephen A. yelling about sports, especially when they don't matter, when he's calling people bums, when he's saying they're not very good. But this is an uncomfortable topic. For you to be talking about it the way you talk about any other topic just feels bad watching it in real time. Like, I didn't enjoy any of his coverage of this topic, and that's not on Stephen A. We've created this kind of debate culture where we can talk about anything like it's a debate. I kind of feel like I don't want a show like First Take to talk about anything serious, because I don't feel like that kind of show can handle it, because they don't handle it with care. They handle it like it's another sports topic they can just yell back and forth with each other about. If ESPN wants to talk about these these kind of topics, respectively, then they should do so on platforms like Outside the Lines and not on First Take. First Take is the biggest example, but none of these sports debate shows are fit to have these kind of nuanced discussions about these kind of sports controversies. They're just not. They can't handle talking about something like this Ime Udoka suspension, because the minute they start talking about these kind of things, they just break out into arguments and somebody is just trying to entertain someone. I don't think this story should be used as entertainment. Getting back to the Celtics, this is the worst start imaginable to the season, and winning isn't going to cure it. After the high of the team making it to the finals, it's almost impossible to believe where they are right now. Like, even if the Celtics get onto a fast start, everyone and everywhere is going to be talking about Ime Udoka wherever the team goes. And I was thinking this when all of this was playing out. Controversies in sports are awful because I don't take sports seriously. I watch them to escape from everyday life. So when something like this comes out, it's hard to act like games still matter. People's lives have been impacted in a way they never should. It takes the joy out of sports. Yes, I'll still watch the Celtics this season and root for them, but there will not be one single game this season where this suspension won't be brought up. And sadly, nothing's going to change that. And it also feels like right now I can really only mourn the basketball season. I know a lot of people will listen to this and say, well, why are you only sad about basketball? This story is bigger than basketball. And I agree with you on that completely. I think there are other victims in this situation. I just don't know any of the facts to talk about it. So right now, all I can really be sad about is the fact that this season for the Celtics is probably going to be somewhat miserable. And maybe that's not a big deal. Maybe it's not. But it was something I was looking forward to. I am a big fan of the Boston Celtics. I had a great time watching them make it back to the finals for the first time in over a decade. They were within 2 games of winning the NBA championship. They lost to Stephen Curry, the best point guard in basketball. We were all having a good time, and now that good time is coming to an end in a way that we never thought was possible. I'm willing to admit that the basketball aspect of this story is probably the thing that matters the least. What matters the most is the real life people who have been impacted by this Ime Udoka situation. One thing that really hasn't been talked about the Ime Udoka suspension is how the NBA feels about it. Like, I feel like once this suspension was handed down, Adam Silver should have said something about it. Maybe he has, and maybe I haven't read it, but don't you find it weird that the NBA is just kind of letting the Celtics handle this on their own? A lot of people called out the Celtics after that press conference. I have no idea if the Celtics are handling this situation well, because I've never been in this situation with a sports team in my life. I've never seen a sports team suspend a coach for an entire season. I've seen the league suspend people for a large amount of time, but never the teams. So I have no idea how the NBA actually feels about how the Celtics are handling this situation. And maybe that's all because of legal purposes. I hope by the time this all plays out, we are actually going to get how the NBA feels about how the Celtics handled this situation. That's the thing about this Udoka story. It is changing every day. It is changing because new details are emerging. We don't know the whole picture. At the end of the day, Ime Udoka really ruined a great chance to win while also tarnishing his reputation, and even more importantly, might have messed with the lives of other people involved. This isn't going away. I'm sure more and more details will emerge. I have faith that the Boston Celtics have made the right decision. Udoka clearly did something unbecoming of an NBA head coach. I'll end on this. There has been so much talk about how the Celtics acted as an organization and if they should have spoken sooner on the situation, and if because of that they look bad. Let me say this. No one looks good on this team right now. They absolutely did fail. They hired this guy, and that's on them. No one involved in this suspension feels good about anything, which is not good at the start of a new season. There is absolutely nothing to feel great about now if you are a fan or you are a member of the Boston Celtics, and that's the saddest feeling I've ever had about a team entering the season. I am a huge Celtics fan. I have been rooting for them since they won the NBA NBA championship back in 2008. I've been a massive fan. I've seen Paul Pierce play. I've seen Jason Tatum grow into a superstar player. I have always been super excited for the season to begin. I have never been as least excited for a basketball season as I am right now, because I know all the talk and all the coverage is going to be about Ime Udoka and the Celtics suspending him. It's not a fun topic to talk about. I know it's a topic that needs to be talked about, but naturally, like every basketball fan, I wish it was a topic that would just go away, and I know it's not going to go away, and I know it shouldn't go away. And again, I'll say this, I also have no faith in the people covering this topic. These modern day sports commentators are really good at their job. They are really good at covering sports because they are having a good time doing it, and they are very entertaining, and they are very good to watch on television. I just don't consider them good at handling these kind of topics with care. Like, I don't want to see Charles Barkley, Kenny Smith, and Shaquille O'Neal talk about the Ime Udoka situation. I'm sure they would do a good job, but no one wants to see that because I don't think they are very qualified at having that kind of conversation about what's going on here. And part of that is because we don't have all the details, so it would just be more mindless speculation. Yes, I do believe eventually we'll move past this situation and we'll move on from talking about it, but not during this season and probably not during next season. This is a big deal. The minute it was announced that Ime Udoka was suspended for an entire season, you knew that it was going to take the sports world by storm, and the way it has taken it has been somewhat disappointing by how the media has covered the story. I have not been in love with the media coverage of the Ime Udoka situation. I don't think that the situation has been spoken about with care or knowledge or actual caring at some points. I think it has been used to create entertainment, and I just don't think every topic needs to be for entertainment purposes. Some topics are more serious than others and need to be talked about with a certain expertise on the facts. Sports radio is another great example. I love listening to sports radio. I love people calling in and having weird conspiracy theories, but I have never been more miserable than hearing people's conspiracy theories about Ime Udoka. It's just not the time or place for people to be talking about something like this, something we don't know the facts about, a serious matter. Those kind of things are fun when the topic you're talking about is fun, and sports are supposed to be fun, but I have to break it to you all. This situation is not fun, and it's going to continue to be not fun to talk about, so we shouldn't talk about it the way we talk about these other fun sports topics. I'm not telling you to ignore it completely. I'm telling people to just talk about it in a more nuanced way than 5 minutes of entertainment value, because there is no entertainment value to the story. It's not fun. People don't want to fester on this situation. They want to move on from it, and that's not the solution either. We should learn more about this situation. We should learn more about how the Celtics dealt with it. We should learn more about what exactly Ime Udoka did. I don't want to know the people involved. I just want to know more about the story itself. I think there's some journalistic value to that. I just think debating it on TV in the morning for 10 minutes without any knowledge is not the way to go with a story like this. The same way I think Twitter is a terrible place for a story like this. I just don't know where you can talk about stories like this anymore with some actual journalistic integrity. The coverage of Ime Udoka has really gotten me nostalgic for a time where outside the lines really was prevalent. They would talk about serious sports topics without yelling at one another. The same for the sports reporters. ESPN used to be the home of some of the best sports coverage when it came to scandals. Now it's become one of the worst, in my opinion. And it's not just ESPN. Fox Sports is the same. I just don't like how the modern media covers these kind of stories. It makes me upset. It almost makes the story even worse because I don't like how they've handled the coverage of it. So many things have been drastically changed forever because of this suspension. Players' careers have been altered. Ime Udoka's coaching career is probably on ice. The reputation of the Celtics organization is not at the best place. And the Celtics knew all of that would happen the minute they suspended Ime Udoka, so they must must have done it for the right reason. Thanks for listening to this edition of Head to Head. I'm Cam McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every Monday on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so please rate, review, and subscribe.